Welcome to Paranormal Palace Radio, where truth equals reality, and truth is often stranger than fiction.
Hello everyone, welcome to Paranormal Palace Radio. This is your host, Royce the Redneck Radio Man. And joining me today is Tommy Hawksblood. And he's got like 2 or 3 books out that I'm going to let him tell you about in a little bit. But the main thing he wanted to talk about today was religion versus spirituality. And Tommy has made the request that we put questions on hold until further on in the show to give him a chance to finish what he's saying first. So if y'all would do me a favor and just make a quick jot down note of your question, or if you do paste it in chat, I'll copy it to a document until it's time. And at a certain point, Tommy will let us know when he's ready to answer questions, and we'll just have a main session and a chat session on separate deals today, and we'll see how that works out. And also, before we get too far along, you can learn more about Tommy at www.howtoseegod.org. For those of you that are not listening right here at Paranormal Palace, pardon me, folks, you can come to www.paranormalpalace.com. So I'm going to go ahead and get us all started on the show while everybody's signing out and back in to get the sound working. And I'm going to let Tommy tell you a little something about himself and what brought him, it's got him interested in this subject. Tommy, I'm glad to have you back on my show again. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing fine. It's always a pleasure. I'm glad to be back on. So,
some of the people here, they know you, they see you in the chat room from time to time when you're here during the live shows. Some of them don't know you, so real quick, for people listening that don't know you, why don't you tell them a little something about yourself and how you got interested in doing this?
Well, it started when I was real young. I was 6 years old. I actually saw my first UFO. I was in a hospital. My brother was in the hospital with me, and this giant ball of light was coming towards the window, and it was heading right where my brother was. I ran over the window, put my hands on the window, and then it shot back out into space. And I was only 6 years old, so I didn't have too much understanding of what was really going on during that whole time. But then for the next 4 years, I actually was being visited by a deity, which I didn't even know who that was for many years. But I just know it was a beautiful green being. And I studied with that being almost every night. And it was maybe 20 years later that I actually found out what deity that was. By the time I was 12, I had a friend staying at my house with me, and we had an alien creature walking around in our house, and we grabbed baseball bats and everything, and then it went out, and then we saw the ship just take off. At that point, I'm 12 years old, and my mother's telling me spirits don't exist, you can't talk to them, because I was always in communication with this being that was working with me. Then I was actually a Protestant at the time, and I became really spiritual in that vein. Went to my minister when I was 14 being baptized, and I asked him 4 questions, because then you're allowed to ask them a question. He couldn't answer any one of them. So at the age 14, I realized I had to start a real search to find the truth. Unluckily, I was introduced to a psychic who became my best friend, one of the top psychics, and I worked with her for 2 years. During that time, I became a witch, learned about all of the psychic powers that you actually can work with in this physical realm. I did something very bad, which I won't even say, but it made me realize that it was not where I wanted to be, and that's when my true spiritual quest started. For the rest of my life, I could say I studied maybe 12 different religions, followed 3 different masters, a lot of inner beings I worked with. So it became an incredible experience all along the way. And along the way I had 4 death experiences. And through them you learn so much. Plus I got involved with a religion that was teaching how to leave the body, which I had no clue what it was. And within the first day I left my body, had this experience. It showed me the next 10 years of my life. And I suddenly realized the truth behind a lot of the lies and the things that people say, talk about, and it just took me into that place of being in awareness of truth. And so I say I live in truth, and I live to find the truth. And I will stand for what I learned as my own truth, because No matter what path you are, whatever you follow, it should be what you truly believe, or you shouldn't be following it. And you should be giving your full heart into that, and never accept other people or other religions' influence in that. But what will happen, which I'll get into, is why that's all going to change really soon. And I'll get into the reasons what you really need to be doing now, what you have to focus on, and why you are focused on what you are already focused on. And I call that programmed ideas. So I'm just about 60. I had a lot of experiences. I had many bad experiences along the way, just as many as good experiences. So what I want to say right from the start, it's easy to repeat what other people say. It's impossible to describe what other people experience. I mean, when people say they were abducted or raped, and I understand, you don't understand until you go through that experience. So these people talk about other people's experiences, even being abducted, whatever it is, they don't know. I mean, if you go to a psychiatrist, they have no clue, and they're trying to tell you what you experienced. So it becomes, if you go through any of those things, you're alone in the world. And it's really hard to face the reality when you know that the reality that most people look at is so far from the truth. So I'm going to get into the details of why that happened, why it's still happening, and why it's going to change. So, I hope that answered that question.
Okay. I was going to say, why don't you go ahead and you know exactly what material you got and how you want to present it. And this is kind of, well, the topic of spirituality and religion is not new to me, but your exact approach and your formatting is new to me. So why don't I let you go ahead and start this where you would like to start it at?
All right, so just feel free to cut in any time. All right, that's the way we'll do it. Okay. The way I'm putting this together today has only come to me recently because I just started my 4th book. I have 3 books out there, and anybody listening to this show, if they email me directly, I'll send them my first book. It'll be an ebook. It was written a couple years ago, many years ago, but it's a good starting point, or it's a good foundation to understand what I'm trying to explain in a short time right now. So I want to start with my first book's How to See God. And I wrote it because people talk about this, that, and the other thing, but when it comes to seeing God itself, and I spent so much time researching God and spiritualism. We'll get into spiritualism because that's a little bit separate. God itself, there was always some kind of forms of gods and God here. It's just the interpretation of that has been changed and rearranged and came out more recently in different aspects like alien gods and ancient gods and different things like that. But the fact is, and this is from my experience, which I give you people techniques to work with to learn how to experience it, and that is, there is one God. But I call the little ones the gods, G-O-D-S, is plural, because they're the ones that are in the lower realms, which interfere with us, work with the lower realms, which means astral plane, physical plane, and the dimensions that all these other things come out of. So my second book, When Truth is Called Crazy, I did that book because most of the people I ever were with all my life call me crazy. Because the second you mention aliens or out of the body, things like that, years ago it wasn't accepted. If it wasn't for like out on a limb, astral projection, or just leaving the body wasn't even recognized among religions and people in the mainstream. I mean, she brought an awareness to something that was very, very important. I mean, religions in general don't get involved with that word or accept it. But I'll get into that too, for the reasons why and why not. But in short, it was part of reality even during Jesus' time. So I just want to get into that book that I'm talking about, When Truth is Called Crazy. It's an autobiography. It's all the good and bad things that happened in my life to get me to where I am now. When I talk about people writing people's stories, I write my story. I write my experience. I'm not writing about everybody else's experiences, what people wrote about, what people prophesied, and all those kind of things. I deal with prophecy because I was with the two Hopi elders right before they died that were carrying the Hopi prophecy. I've danced all across the United States, powwow dancing, native dancing. Got to sit nights with many elders across the United States from every tribe, all the tribes, because we have lots of different tribes always dancing together. And the Mayans and the Aztecs and the Hopi, they all have different prophecies. Plus they've been changed so much over the past few years, because, and I hate to say this, but when the white man gets involved with native teachings, they are twisted and always made to sound nice. I mean, even when the white man first smoked a pipe with the native people, it was called the peace pipe. No, it was never a peace pipe. It wasn't about becoming peaceful friends. It was about prayer. It was about praying together, sending your prayer to God or Spirit. So, I mean, even the idea is when man hears a word, they twist it to fit what they want it to mean. So why I'm getting into that is because what I'm going to talk about is the creating of belief and religion, because we're programmed so much at so many levels, especially since we're born, what's real, what's not real. So when you learn about Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, and Jesus and God and all these different things, and you're told, well, the Easter Bunny is not real, Santa Claus is not real, but God's real, or if you're a Christian and Jesus is real, I mean, it's hard for a little child to adapt to that. But then in school and in grammar school and different things, you kind of be programmed into what a God is. If you pull up a dictionary and look up the word God, you'll find very little definition of God. And why? Very few people have any experience at all of what God is. So how could anybody write much about that? So what I'm saying is, when people write books on experience, and many of them have just one experience in their life, and they take that, write a book, and then they suddenly become more aware and think they know everything there is, and they're like super famous all of a sudden in their own mind. I consider myself one of the luckiest people on the planet. I don't consider my ego big, but some people might say that because of what I know. But I'm not saying that what I know is from somebody else. It's from the actual experiences that I went through, which make it real to me. I don't try to get into all my experiences because then I'm trying to show my experience with God, and that you can't really do for anybody. And that's an individual thing that every soul, every person has to experience and learn how to create and work with themselves. So we're living in a world right now. The world's created by so many lies. The problem with that is man has accepted them. And by that I mean, we can go back to the beginning of time when the first gods were here and what people were working with in those days to what they're working with now. And the problem also with that is mankind right now is living in this illusion that everything's going to be beautiful. And then you have to say, well, where did that idea come from? I can go into the whole aspect of the New Age world and why that's becoming what it is, but we will get into that a little bit here and there.
Okay.
But I want to hold on to the fact that we're trying to get into the beginning of how I want to split this, because we are so in tune with the idea of this ultimate dream we have, and two words we bring into that to create that, and one is love, and the other word is spiritualism. Now, everybody thinks they know what love is, and everybody thinks they know what spiritualism is. So look up those two words in a dictionary and see if they fit into your exact idea of what that word means. When you talk about love, you're talking about feelings and emotions inside the physical body. And they are different between every soul on this planet. Everybody experiences the same thing. I mean, if you're eating an apple, when everybody bites into that apple, they're all going to taste something, yes. They're going to have different reactions to the way it tastes. Some might like it, some might not. So when you say the words, you use the word love, the definition here is so different between every person that talks about it. To think that a world with 7 billion people could say, well, we're all going to love each other. What does that mean? most men, if you ask them the definition of love, will be much different than when you ask a woman. And when it comes down to sex and all those other words that fit into that, it changes that even. For a little child that never had sex, when they say they love somebody, it's more of a different kind of feeling than when an older man says they love somebody or a middle-aged man loves somebody. So all those things interfere with the word that we talk about. But the actual definition of love being the ultimate reality for all worlds, all time, and all beings, I would say is one of the most twisted lie that man's living by. I mean, I could go into the beginning when love was first created, because you have to go back, and women were never really accepted as a part of man's reality. I mean, men were considered the big people, the important people, and women weren't. So the whole concept of love was created rather recently. So I'll get into that a little more too, but I want to fill in the details right now. The word spiritualism. We have this other word suddenly on the rise among all people, that the world's becoming more spiritual. Look up the word spiritualism in the dictionary. You're not going to get very much. If you don't know spirit, which is the beginning of spiritualism, you don't know what spiritualism is. If you never had an experience of being spirit, which means the actual energy source and all of your being when you're outside of the body, if you didn't experience that, you have no idea what spirit really is. So they're saying spiritualism means the understanding of that. So if you never had that experience, how can you say you're becoming something you don't even know what it is? And that's the problem with the human race right now, is we compare things to what we don't know, including God. So for me, I have been visited by a being for many years. I have been out of my body. I spent 25 years learning how to travel outside of my body. You learn about angels, deities, beings, creatures, all those kind of words. But there's always a protection, and the highest form in all realms, all dimensions, is God. So when people say we're all God, I'll debate that in a second, but we'll get into that. But as we live our life, we should be searching for the definition for ourselves, but in an experience rather than a dictionary telling us what it means. If you want to understand soul, spirit, one must learn to leave the physical body. Not dying. I mean, it does happen when you die, but you want to be aware of being able to separate from the physical body. And the reason why for that, because when it gets close to your dying time, you will be with nothing if you haven't experienced that. Because faith is a word that is an idea that you're putting your attention on something that you have no clue whether it's real or not. And that's my definition for it. Experience means you understand it, you experience it so you know it's real. And that becomes no longer faith. When people talk about they talk to God and all these other things, it's easy to say that. But in reality, how much experience is really happening on what they're actually talking about? For me, when I had my first experience and I stepped out of my body, this ball of light was coming towards me. And I wasn't afraid. I grabbed it, and then I was traveling, and I saw my life, the next 10 years of my life. But when I'm saying most people, when they start learning about that, the first time they're getting pulled out of their body or leaving their body, they freak out, and they're afraid. And then they come back in their body, and they lose that experience, and they probably won't have it for many years if they ever have it again in this lifetime. So I give a few things to pointers for people. You need to have that experience, but you need to be aware, if it's in a true coming from your heart that that's what you want to experience, that you are totally protected during it, no matter what can go down, what can happen. No entities, no spirits, no beings, nothing else can interfere with that. And at any point, you can always challenge, if you see a being or a person or a spirit in front of you, that being or spirit in the name of God, to prove and say what it is, because nothing can say they are God on the inner worlds. In the physical realm, anybody can say they're God or they are God, they are your God, and all those kind of things, but it's not real. Because unless it comes inside your spiritual body, and you become aware of it, it's not really as important as we think it is. I mean, we can go, I'll be going through that as I get deeper into what I'm trying to talk about here. But it's why I said that through all my talking, everything I say, the most important thing is to realize you need to understand what your soul truly is, which is who you really are. And it has nothing to do with the physical body. The problem is people think the physical body is just as spiritual and important as the soul body. The problem is the physical body can't live without the soul body, but the soul body lives forever. So to me, that's a big separation. And the problem that separates the two of them is called mind. And the mind is basically really, if you want to look at it in a way that you can actually understand it, is just the computer. It's not a human consciousness. It only holds thoughts and programs. It allows spirit to put its truth through that, like a buffering machine, like when you put information in a computer, you get the information out. It's what holds it. So whatever you put in there is what you get out. Every experience that you physically experience gets programmed in there. So all these words and everything become what are programmed words. And the computer can only act on that as by the way it was programmed with that word in the beginning. So when you go into things that are abstract, like abduction, rape, and things like that, the mind isn't programmed. There's no definition in the program that explains it. So it does interfere with the way people live lives from that point on. So this all gets very complicated if you sit and really think about it and really want to understand it. It's a lot easier to say, well, that's not real, like aliens aren't real, or that didn't happen. I mean, that's a way to hide from it. And most people want to hide from the truth. I've been a truth seeker all my life, but I haven't met too many people out there ready to really search for the truth. They want to know there's a God, or they want to know this, they want to know that, but they don't want to really know what it does. When I wrote my first book, How to See God, I realized because people will say, I know God, and I said, what do you know about God? When I worked for the phone company for 20 years, so I got to work in temples and churches and a lot of different kind of places where spiritual people were. And I always managed to talk to them. I felt it was just as much important talking to those people about that than doing my job. But when I did, I found most of these people have very little understanding of God, which is real scary. Second of all, they have very little understanding of spirit. I mean, you could say, well, in the name of spirit, you can't force spirit to do anything. In the name of God, you can't force God to do anything. God does what it wants, period. When people sit there and pray and tell God to do something, I mean, that's ego. And that's people thinking they are God. Because God, if you believe in that aspect of it, it sees and knows everything. So why do you have to tell it what it already knows? You don't. So I say there, I almost wrote a book on prayer, but I just decided too many people wouldn't pick it up because they're all programmed to believe that their prayer is so important. And now they're saying, well, if you pray, it changes the world, it changes it. Well, let's take a look at that real fast. The Tibetan people, who I consider one of the most spiritual people on the planet, have always been praying, and they pray all day. And that's their belief system. And they're being slaughtered, killed, and they're not even allowed to practice their own religion. So here's people praying, that's supposed to be asking for the protection and guidance, and they're being the most sought out, killed, and everything else right now. Tibet's almost completely gone. China has destroyed them to the max. The United States will not get involved because they're afraid to fight China. So here's all these fears based on, well, if these people are spiritual, let's not defend them. Let's defend this country that's given us oil. I don't understand that. It's so sickening how mankind, well, we know that the world's based on money, and people live their lives on money. I'm sure there's a few good people out there that truly give from their heart, live from their heart. But in a world of 7 billion people, most of them don't even have the chance to be that. Because when we say the world is so spiritual right now, look around the world. Go outside of your house. Go around the neighborhood. See how many homeless people there are. See how many starving little kids there are. Look at what's really happening. Pull up the numbers. I think, there's 7 children dying every minute. So those odds are because of people's ignorance. So the word spiritual and becoming super spiritual is so abstract or so unreal to what's really going on, it's scary. I know they use the word, oh, don't let fear in. Fear, to me, there is only one true fear, and the way I look at it, I mean, everybody says, well, this is fear, that's it. No, you live life, but the only thing you should fear is God. Well, no, because God has given you all your knowledge and everything that you have. And if somebody gives you a house and you burn it down, don't you think you're responsible for that? So whatever you do in your own little house, which is your temple, you are responsible for. And if you're not responsible for it, nobody is. And God allow every soul to be responsible for the world they create and live in. But the problem is now everybody says we create the same world, but we create our own world. Right, we create the same world, which means 7 billion people's ideas of what a world should be. Not my idea, because my idea of a world is not this physical realm at all. But most people say, well, this is the most beautiful place. That is because they have never experienced anything outside of it. When you're living in a box, you don't know what anything else looks like other than the box. So until you're ready to step out of the box, can you understand the real truth behind where that box is sitting and what the box is really doing. So yeah, a lot of people are not ready for what I'm going to say because they like their little box they live in and they feel protected. Protection of what? Protection of dying? You're going to die. You're going to die sooner or later. And now that's another fear that man has created, so man wants to live longer. And I always say, why live longer? To keep the pain and suffering going longer? To keep the illusion growing longer? If you experience being out of your body, you will realize that word longer doesn't exist anymore. That you're not going to die. The ego will, which is probably a really good thing for everybody. But the idea of dying is still that other thing that keeps everybody trying to live longer. I'm going to get into that because all through Bible stories, religious stories, ancient documents of teachings and stuff, there was these gods and there was these things going on. They're not good, not bad, but what was happening was man was still being controlled. And the bottom line to what I want to get into right now is what this control really is and programmed ideas. People talk about religions. There was so many religions. Go past the average religion, like all the ones we know today, to the secret religions and teachings. Before I say anything about that, I want to say I became aware of many of my lifetimes, as far back as Atlantis, all the way to Bible times, to just a couple hundred years ago. So when I go into my experiences and then see what I know or understand what I experienced, it becomes so real why and what we are right now. If people don't even get into learning about their past lives or believe in them, they lose a whole part of their own consciousness and awareness. By tuning into that, you can grow greatly, not in strength or size, but spiritually. And I will use the word spiritually because when you relate that to God and to spirit, that's what it is. But if you relate it to the physical realm of food, clothing, houses, anger, and all those kind of things, it has no connection. And to say everything's going to be beautiful, what's beautiful? I mean, it's just an ego of what they perceive as what they really like. I mean, some people say women are beautiful. Some people say trees are beautiful. Some people say water is beautiful. So that even that concept's so limited to a person's individual limited idea of what beauty is. So the concept of spiritualism, if it's not relating back to its true source, spirit, it has no connection. So for all these people giving these giant lectures, charging thousands of dollars to come to their seminar to hear how to become spiritual, they don't have a clue to what they're talking about. You can't charge somebody to give them what they already have. You can't charge somebody to give them spirit or to teach them how to find spirit. For when you do, you are going against the spiritual laws. Very few people want to believe that there are spiritual laws. But I will tell you the number one spiritual law is as long as you create karma, you'll stay here in this physical realm. And people say, well, I asked for forgiveness and I'm forgiven. No, you're not. Did you work out that karma? Every soul is responsible for every single thing they do in this lifetime and every other lifetime they became aware of. Now, if we go into the Bible story, Jesus said to his followers, or the people that he was healing and working with, he said to them, first of all, he came for people that had no faith. He said, "He who have no faith, follow me." He wasn't looking for people that had a religion, because people with a religion are already programmed. But the people that started following him, he said to them, go out and sin no more. So he said, I'm going to give you knowledge and spiritual truth, but you have to live by that. So when somebody goes out and commits a sin right after it, they're not listening to what they were just shown and were given. Like now, well, I can do something and I'll ask forgiveness later, or I can just say it's not mine and let it go. New Age people think they don't have karma. Oh, I'm beyond karma. You can believe whatever you want. Getting back to soul, when it's still in the physical body and it's coming close to death, if it's not aware of anything beyond death, it will not know, and it will have a horrible time when it leaves and does that transition. Plus, it will reincarnate in a rather short time. I could get into the whole thing about ghosts and spirits. We might if I have time, but I don't want to get into that right now. I mean, with all these psychics that talk to spirits and everybody's waiting to go see their grandmother and grandfather in heaven when they get there. I mean, that's the biggest delusion that people live by. Even in one lifetime, if you were married 3 times, had 2 sets of children, and you're old and you're dying, and they all die, who do you want to be with? Which family do you think you're going to be with when you're in heaven, if that's your idea of what heaven is? Do you want to be with your first wife, your second wife? Do you want to come back to be with your children? I mean, if you think like that, it holds you in that twisted idea of that energy. But it's like an unreal idea. If you think it out just a little bit, would you want to sit in a room with your wife, your grandfather, for the rest of infinity? To do what? Sit there and talk about what? So man has created these incredible delusions and illusions to live by, when in reality, if you look at them, how far does it go? Which I will get into, because as far as aliens coming here and all that, that illusion is locked, and they're trying to keep it locked into that. And that's a really horrible thing, which we'll get into. But getting back to this whole thing about God, what's the difference between gods, aliens, and God itself? Everything. Aliens portray to be God because man accepts anything that has power as a god. Anything that has more power than they do, they call it a god. I mean, in the physical realm, it's king, queen, and things like that. But on a higher level, when this giant being comes to the planet or something like that, it's a god because it's bigger and it's why they would assume that it would be God and not just a deity or an angel or whatever, based on what it looks like. And we'll get into that, because when you talk about what angels look like, what deities look like, deities are kind of like angels, but deities are more what people experienced before angels were created. If you go back to the beginning of time, and like right around Atlantis' time when it started getting destroyed and everything, what they were worshiping, what they prayed to, I wouldn't even say worship, because they were aware beings at that time. And there was many races here in the beginning in Atlantis. There were 9 races. 5 of them left. 4 races actually had to stay here. And the 5 that left, I can go into that, which will be later. As far as what they were, like the blue beings, green beings, and you can tell because the few that were here, like Shiva, Durga, Kali, Krishna, they became super beings and considered gods and everything else. So, yeah, that's why man has been forced into that. And now I'll throw in one little thing, is the alien races that brought them all here in the first place. Most races were brought by 2 races. And the main race that's controlling almost everything that mankind has ever done and will be doing for a very long time is called the reptilian race. Even if you check out the brain, they call part of the brain the reptilian brain. And I don't think people ever realized why that was even a possibility. Well, I'm a human. Why would I have a part of a reptilian brain? I mean, if you believe in that we came from lizards and all those kind of things, I feel sorry for you. But I mean, they're trying to bring it back into schools and different things too, even. But the idea that mankind has been so only alive for such a short period of time is ridiculous. I mean, if you watch Ancient Aliens and all the new things they're bringing about, all the facts that are on this physical planet, cities and civilizations that were here many years before, we can go a lot further than 35,000 years now, it becomes, what history are we dealing with? I mean, we did find dinosaur bones, and we did find this, so we know there were different life forms here, but there are only certain levels down in the ground, so that means how many time frames, how far that can go. But they did find humans with dinosaur skeletons together, so that totally changes the idea that humans weren't here when dinosaurs were alive. So yeah, we can go through history, but the real history, very few people want to know or want to believe. We have science, which people say, well, we need science. They're programmed, first of all, and they're only given half of information to work out a problem. If every scientist had all the facts that the government has as far as UFOs and everything else, they would have known 50 years ago, everybody would have known that we can travel faster than the speed of light. Einstein said no, his theory just was proven wrong rather in the past couple months. So, I mean, people stay with these ideas. If you don't have all the truth, if you put in a puzzle together and you have 10 pieces missing, you can't finish the puzzle, can you? So mankind has been trying to finish this puzzle, which is impossible to put together unless you have all the pieces. And they refuse to look for other pieces. I mean, when the Bible was created, they created the Bible with 10 Gospels. There's 50 Gospels. 40 of them were found. So these people hear that. Even the priests and ministers, they don't want any more truth. We got enough. Enough of what? 4 people's stories? Now, wording. Let's get into wording real fast. When we talk about wording, words were created by certain people. I don't know how certain people have the right to create a word and other people don't, but we have a bunch of words in a dictionary. Go back to past Bible time. Go further back. How many things did they have in existence? Like, did they they had a spoon, maybe a plate, a table, a chair. They had lots of animals, so they gave all those things words. But what about, we have millions of things they never had, so we have millions and millions of more words now. So when we try to relate to their understanding, they had a limited way to express whatever they talked about compared to how we can express things because we have 10 million more words to clarify what we're trying to say. So when these people wrote stories about gods and things, oh, well, they meant this or they meant this. Even in the Bible, which people really need to read, even if they're not in a religious state, because it explains the twisting of man's ego to what's being put in front of him. If you read the very beginning of the Bible, when God created the earth and all those kind of things, I mean, and it talks about us, and then they try to say, well, us means because he's royalty. God wasn't royalty, it was just what it is. And it didn't need to be called royalty. Man's renaming what it said. And when God gets into the fact, when he created the animals after their kind, who's their kind? And then he says the beast after his kind, who's his kind? And then they say they're now like us. Who's us? See, people read things, they take what they want, and they just let go of whatever they don't want. If it's there, you should analyze everything that's in front of your face, not what you feel like, what you want to. I mean, you can have a story, but you only have part of the story. And then that part of the story you have to create and fill in with your own story. And that's what happened to half of the books of the Bible. That's what happened when they created the Bible. Never mind now they're finding all these other parts of the Bible with different stories about different things. People don't want to hear it because they're already programmed. Well, this is the truth. So now anybody finds anything, now they find cities and more cities underground and in the ocean. Well, they try to justify it and say, well, that can't be a city. Oh, well, then what is it? So over the past even 5 years, the amount of stuff that has been found in the ocean as far as cities is incredible. To just say, well, who are they? Where'd they come from? I will get into religions later again. But as far as the alien part, when the races started coming here, bringing the human race here, there were reasons. And I can tell you because I was there and I became aware of that. And you can become aware of that if you did have that incarnation. But that's also learning how to realize that you are soul, getting out of the body, and then you can start going deeper into that. But as far as coming to this world, these beings that brought us here were multiple. There was so many different kind of beings playing with the human race, working with the human race. But you have to realize when they brought us here, what were we really doing? People talk about becoming spiritual. And the first thing I say to them, what are you going to do when you're spiritual? Ask the average person what spiritual means. And they'll probably say, well, helping feed the homeless or helping people do something. Not realizing who they are, what they are, and what their purpose here is. And I mean, if everybody felt that it was to feed the homeless, I mean, why is it like we didn't do that millions of years ago? It's not the reason. It's not the program that was programmed into the subconscious mind, which was programmed, like I'd say, since the after Atlantis was destroyed. They had their play on everybody that was here. After the giants were killed, I mean, there was a lot of things going on. And if you don't search out history and really dig into it, you're not going to understand how each one evolved into the next thing. But during the programming, the races that brought us here brought us for very few things. And I'll use 2 words, and you don't have to believe me, but if you start doing a lot more research, a lot more digging, and really, really thinking hard on the situation, why was man brought here? And it wasn't to become super spiritual beings like people say they are now. And if that was true, and if we're all trying to become this one consciousness, which is another word I can't stand, if we all became the same consciousness that we originally were, why would there be a reason to go through not being that? All right, consciousness in that vein grows, and if we all grow together, but we don't. Every soul grows in its own way. And I can't stress the idea that soul has to be understood at every level before you die. And with the changes on the planet coming and all the things that we're going through, that's not going to be very easy. And especially that the government knows that. They're doing all these other things to keep your mind so locked into the physical realm, so locked into nothing that you don't even want to take a step out of your house to do anything. It's a horrible program. Getting back to the 2 words, why the human race was brought here. The first word is food. There's 2 kinds of food that alien races need. One is spiritual food, spiritual energy, converted to a magnetic energy, whatever. It's a force that man or humans create. The second thing is gold. You have to realize that every point in history, gold was always considered the most important thing. Why? Why gold? Why not silver? Why not brass? Why not copper? Why not any of the other metals? Why not other stones? I mean, yeah, women like diamonds, but why was it gold? Why were they mining gold in Africa 3,000 years ago? Why have they found that that's so important to basing our whole system on? Because it's a trade that they trade aliens with and have been for a very long time. All these races, all through the beginning of time, are building these giant things. People have no clue why. Oh, to put this one guy in there. Why were all these people worshiping this one person? It's all programmed, and that person's in power. But, which I only come into awareness, and I actually started trying to go back to experiences to understand why, what these beings are. They weren't human. Go further back and read the little things that say, well, like even in the beginning of the Bible, they lived 800 years. A few of these people. And I mean, why is that? And why is it like these people are dealing with the angels and we're not dealing with them now? I mean, I'll debate that. We'll get into that later too, as why all these channelers that channel all these aliens and angels and deities. Alright. Every time angels, deities came into this world or manifested to this reality, something happened. It wasn't like, well, the angels are here to have coffee with us and say everything's cool. When people channel these beings and they came and told me what? Oh, they're here to help us. Everything I heard, and I've been in the lecture scene for over 15 years, I heard very famous channelers and all those psychics out there talking. And the only problem is I never, ever heard one important fact come from any of them. It's always about the help's coming, the help's there, and don't worry about it. And funny, the world's crashing. We're going downhill, crime, abuse, everything's escalating higher than it has ever been. And we're still sitting there saying, oh, we're going into 5th dimension. We're going to be fifth-dimensional beings. Everybody's going to be, all the murderers are going to just shift into this golden-like being, bringing the world good things and changing their attitude. Every man on this planet is going to forget about sex and be a compassionate being. That would be cool if it was possible, but it's not, and it can't happen, and it won't happen. And again, people go on about these delusions that they're living in, spreading it around, charging lots of money. Sure, the poor people can't go to these lectures. Not that it would help them, because it wouldn't. And it's a good thing that they don't have money, because they would lose the little money they had following a false truth. I'll get into healing real fast right now, because a lot of the people out there that claim to be channelers, healers, and they heal people. What do you heal people of? A disease, a sickness. Very few people understand this, and I'll try to explain it simply. Sickness is only a non-awareness of spirituality. If you're not aware of your true spirit, you can't heal yourself. And the body becomes stagnant, sick. When you get more in touch with spirit, you can heal anything going on in your body, because it's only a house that it uses, and it's only a temporary thing. There is a time frame. You only have 125 years to do that. Mankind wants to change that too, but I don't know if it's going to happen. I won't debate that. But as far as right now, you can't live past 125 years. So we want to make our bodies live longer to get to 125, and then what? Then you die? You're still going to die. Are you aware of anything else different? No. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir, I can.
Oh, just making sure. I don't want to be here talking to myself. It would be a horrible thing. But so as the translations of this happening, people talk about, I know this and I know that. They don't know the truth of their own self. And they're going to go out and heal people in the name of God or in the name of an angel or the name of this. You can't take that. Two souls don't live in the same body. Very few cases all through the history has that ever happened. When people say they control multiple bodies, that's a little bit more possibility, but only spiritual people can do that too. So in general, these people claiming to be healers, going out healing people. Heal me of what? I have cancer. Where did that cancer come from? Well, they're putting poisons in the food. Anything you put in the body can be changed into something the body needs if you're at a spiritual vibration. Very few people know that. Very few people will believe that. But it's only the sickness of spirit, of the mind, not allowing spirit to flow through the body. So when people say this, that, my heart's open. Your heart isn't open. If you don't understand your past lives and you don't have a clue to what God is, how spiritual are you? How can you say that? Even in the Bible, when they were trying to get, Moses was trying to get God to say who and what he is, and that people were going to call him, what should they call him? And his reply at that time was, I am that I am. He didn't say, I am God, I am this, or I am that. He wasn't trying to say anything. And we can go into that, because I think Moses actually worked with a few different gods. And the reason why I say that, the Egyptians, which was actually who Moses was against, had their own gods. And those gods were a lot more reptilian gods and a lot different gods at that time. So when Moses was fighting that, he had to break away from that, because that's all he knew. He knew those gods. So he had to take that and twist it into a new belief that he didn't understand yet. But here's the saddest part of that whole story. Here's a person meeting with the supposed God of the Christian religion, which I'll say, gives him a Bible, the 10 Commandments that were in the Bible, sorry. And here's 10 rules to live by. Bring it down to your people. Within a few days, he goes down to his people and kills 3,000 people. And the first thing on the thing says, thou shalt not kill. So, how spiritual was Moses? I call Moses one of the greatest spiritual unbelievers. He wasn't spiritual because he didn't understand it. Second of all, he was the greatest magician that ever lived on this planet. Supposedly he lived more longer than almost everybody else. I mean, Adam lived 800 years, and those people lived, a few of those people supposedly lived a long time. But Moses lived the longest. And he wrote the whole beginning of the Bible. So here's a person working with a God that he claims to be God, and he doesn't even listen to it. How is that possible? I don't think anybody that's not completely crazy or insane or whatever words you want to use, that was just met with God or the highest being that you could ever imagine, and it tells it to do something and it does it within a few weeks, I think that's very sick. And I don't know what kind of a sickness could have created that, except that they were worshiping different gods, and even the gods were fighting in those days. Moses' God was on the third world. Jehovah. Jehovah is the God of the third world. If you want to know. When you start traveling and get out of the body, you can meet with that deity. But it is not the ultimate God. I know everybody's going to hate that. Until you can experience the first God, any God, outside of the physical body, can you even talk about it? So what I'm saying is, get that experience if you really want to pound me with questions. Because I met with so many gods getting out of the lower realms into the highest realm. And the fifth realm alone has a female god, and it's the only place that does. So when you say goddess, it's not that goddess that most people talk about. But in general, when you start meeting gods and deities, I mean, in different religions, going back to the Indian days, in ancient India and stuff like that, when they talk about the deities that were their gods, I met with many of them. I worked with one for years. Aklud and Shiva I met with. And these deities, if you can't read about them, because then it programs what you think they are and how they are. And I do want to say that because our concept of God is so programmed to think that it's a loving, compassionate being. And then if you go into all those definitions, it all revolves around the physical body's emotions. And when you're outside of the body, the spirit body doesn't have them. So when an angel brought a plague into the world, or disease, or whatever, it wasn't love and compassion. And getting even to Moses, his God, Jehovah, was going against the Egyptian race, because the Egyptian race were reptilian gods, under the guise of reptilian gods. And if you don't understand that, you won't understand why Moses was trying to separate the people, and why there was such this war going on. But it wasn't like, well, I believe in Jesus or God, or not Jesus, but in God. It was what God? And there was multiple gods. And in the beginning of times, including Atlantis, there was animals, and those gods were like animals, because they were half and half. And then you go into the deities, they had multiple heads, multiple arms, multiple legs, and wings, and everything else. So you're still dealing with physical creatures, not God, because God doesn't have a physical body. It doesn't look like a physical being at any form, any level, any way. So even in the Bible, man has accepted the idea we are like God, or we are in God's image. Whether you're a Christian or not, most people believe that. If you believe there's a man sitting on a throne somewhere up in the higher realms, you're looking at not what really is God. So the concept of man being like God or looks like God is so wrong. And then when these super powerful beings or creatures come, they're accepted as gods. Because if I can put you wherever I want to put you, I'm your God, at least in that moment. But inside your heart, if your spirit's truly connected to spirit, which goes back into God, nothing can separate you from that. And that is the only thing that's important. And I will stress that all through whatever I get to say, because that's what you're striving for, that's what you're trying to attain. Not healing the world, not feeding the world, because if you feed a person, they can live their whole life and they still didn't get 2 feet further than where they were when you first started feeding them. So, getting back to understanding yourself as soul is the most important experience you will go through or learn to go through at some point in one of your lives or future lives. And God never used the plural, but I always use the plural when I speak of the lower realms with the beings and deities that work in them, because most people work with them. When a person claims they are channeling Gabriel, Michael, any of the deities, Metatron, where that word come from, when they channel these gods and what they call super angels, and everybody's doing it, it's funny that they don't come out with anything important. So I'm just saying, they don't work the way they did at some point in history, or the illusion that mankind wants to believe that they're working with us and helping us and protecting us and all those things. Look at how many people die. There's still lots of people dying every single minute, every single day. Hasn't changed. The abuse hasn't changed. So how much of these people, quote, saying they're becoming spiritual, really learning as they go along the way? Movies are putting more of the truth out there for you to reflect on. If you never saw The Matrix, or even if you did, Watch it 3 times in a row. That sounds stupid. Then listen to what's being said in that movie. The person that created that has such an awareness of the inner workings of spirit and reality, and that's why he actually did that movie for that reason. A lot of the movies, like even Avatar, has a lot more inner truth in it, or the Tree of Life and things like that. But if you look through these movies, there's so much truth coming out because they can't put truth out mainstream because government will never allow it. And because government's trying to control man because it's under control by something else. I won't get into the whole new world order and control and over reptilian gods controlling them. That's true, but I won't get into it right now. I want to stick to this part of it. We need to learn to get out of the body, in spirit, and understand that, no matter what. And there's so many different ways to do it. I wouldn't suggest every single way, and the most simplest and important thing to do is really putting attention on the idea of doing it. Because if you don't focus on that, you'll never do it. Unless you have a death experience, I had 4. So if you're thrown into a place where you're dying, you're suddenly there. But in general, you need to create a technique in your life that works for you. And you can find the technique in a few different paths, but they have to work for you. No matter whatever technique you find, work with it. If it doesn't work in a month or 2 months' time, find another one. Because you really don't need to do it for hundreds of years or 10 years or even 20 years for it to work. If you put your attention on becoming aware of soul, your true self, spirit, it'll happen. Because that is one of the greatest gifts Spirit, God, Source gave us. The ability to be aware of what and where we came from. Otherwise, there would be no real purpose to even be in here if that wasn't even true. But man has blocked that out so incredibly ridiculous that it's not going to become like something anybody really wants to think about. And they don't. As far as like in the old days, if your body sinned, you would cut those parts off. Then it became, just ask for forgiveness. No, it's not about the physical body. And that's basically all it's saying. It's a matter of becoming aware, and you have reincarnated many times. And when you become aware of that, it's much more knowledge that soul can work through the physical body. A lot of it slips through when you're suddenly like you go out and ride a horse and suddenly you could ride a horse, or you do something you never did and it's instantly there. It's only because soul is aware of that and it slipped it through the mind. The mind said, well, I have to learn that. All those things, and that's why all these children are being born with incredible gifts right now. The government knows that. That's a whole other thing, but the government knows that, and they've been abducting children for over almost, I would say, 15 years or even more for that reason. And that's, if you want to understand that, get into the Montauk Project, which was an extension of the Philadelphia experiment. And now you got people coming out about the Pegasus program. All those things are real. Now, the word that they use, conspiracy theory, I don't think if anybody looked at the definition, they would say the same thing. Conspiracy theory. A theory is a theory. It means you have an idea, and if you do this, it'll happen. Proving it is what the problem is. But conspiracy means that people are proving things to prove that that's not real. But basically, it's the same thing. Until it is proven real, it's still a theory. So whether it's a conspiracy theory or a theory, it's still the same thing. So it's not like, that's some stupid theory, or that's some stupid... It's just a theory, and that's what people live by. Everything that we live by right now is only part of the theory of how we got here, why we're here, why we do what we do. But as long as man focuses on the real theory, it's never going to understand why theory was created in the first place. Which means going back into creation. Creation, why God created everything. So that's something that I'm just suggesting, putting in your thought while you're thinking about these other things that I'm going to try to get out. Now, portrayals of creatures in the Bible, creatures in India in ancient times, they were based on the animals that lived here. The bird, lizard, the dragon, the wings. They put them all together. Even the demon of the whole black magic thing is that being of a goat's head, half human, goat's legs, and it's half and half, and how they create these different things. And then the dragon as like a flying lizard, and we take things and we just add more things to it. By adding more things to it, we think we make it better. And when I say strip away everything you think you know about God and start over, because you're not going to understand it with the idea that it's compassionate, loving being, that it looks anything human, that it looks like a creature even, because it doesn't. So all those concepts fog and keep the thought from learning and seeing beyond that, which is something very important to break out of. I mean, I almost became a preacher. I was studying. I was going to church 4 days a week, 4 hours a night. I almost signed the paper to become a preacher, and then I realized I can't teach this stuff. It's not half of the truth. It's not even 1/10 of the truth. I mean, if you go through the Bible, in the old Bible, the old part of the Bible, you'll read that the, quote, big name people had to entertain the angels. How do you entertain angels? I mean, they did these things, but they were talking about beings, not spiritual beings. Beings that were living of the physical. And the gods they were worshiping were of the physical. The temples were built for these giant beings, not little munchkins or little people. Oh, well, they were bigger than. Well, there was a race that was bigger than. We can go into that. But here's something that I want to throw into this whole part.
Okay.
In the stories... Oh, you got a question?
No, I said, okay, go ahead, throw it in there.
Okay. Here's a word, and it's called sexual. And it's been a part of reality always. And it's the main part of reality for most people. And you wonder why. Well, love and blah, blah, blah and all that. But sex has still been the foreplay, afterplay, during play of relationships, of friendship, of no friendship. And if you go back, and I'll tell you this, which is very scary, in any religious or any ancient readings you'll read, that the deities, the gods, all were having sex with the humans. Does that sound funny? It sure does to me, if you don't look at it in a great way. Why is that? Why reptilians still abduct people and have sex with them? The Greys don't, I'll tell you that. I will get into that too, but as far as the reptilians, they love sex with humans. Anybody that I work with many people through hypnosis and that had those kinds of experiences. It's basically that's what it's all about. The Greys are trying to produce their family from us because they're dying out, and they're genetically cloning themselves with us, and that's how they're going to survive. But as far as the reptilian race, they're still playing with us. They still need gold. They still need people to mine the gold. So yeah, the world will not ever be destroyed as long as any reptilian race is alive. Or there's a few other races that need a few things from here. So the world will stay here, no matter what happens. Even the greatest disasters will take some people away. Getting back to the foods that the reptilians need, I said food. The physical food is actually eating physical food. So that's why we're here, for one reason. Why do you think there's so many disappearances around the world, and it's incredible numbers, that they have no clue where they went, what happened to them? All right? We can get into the science thing as far as like government working out deals with the alien races, how many people they could abduct in a year, and as long as they don't remember that they're being abducted, they allow them to tape and all those kind of things. But I work with many people. I don't know if you ever heard the word Bud Hopkins. If you didn't, check him out. He just died recently.
Yeah,
but he was
about that.
He was one of the biggest people as far as abduction. He spent half of his life working with people that were abducted and writing books about it. He personally never had an experience. Everything he wrote about was people's experiences. Again, I said you can't understand a person's experience until you experience it yourself. You only get parts of it. So his books even when he worked with people through hypnosis, I just met a woman that was one of his students, and she had to go to 3 other hypnotists, and I said, I'll work with you if you want. But he didn't have the technique because he wasn't, I hate to say this, he wasn't a very spiritual person. When you work with hypnosis, if you're not spiritual, it becomes a game and becomes a toy. Especially if you're trying to help a person get past some kind of serious problem in their life, or even go back into another life. It's like, if you're not aware of soul and completely aware of that, how can you lead somebody or guide somebody through that? You can't. Then again, it's who you're protected by. Somebody that's doing hypnosis and is aware of alien abduction that's not super spiritually aware of themselves can be pulled into the same energy that the person that they're working with is already in. So if somebody was abducted by a reptilian race, and this person's trying to help him realize that, and he starts hypnotizing this person, he hypnotizes everything around himself at the same time, so that energy merges. So a lot of the stuff that when hypnotists try to do that, they're producing some of their own things and making it come out through the other person. And I don't like to do it much anymore because of that reason. I did become aware of my junk, so I know what's coming through for me, but these people have no clue of that. So what I'm saying is, it's a game, and it becomes a toy in reality that's been accepted. I won't even say his name, but one of the most famous hypnotists is online, on Coast to Coast a lot, writes hundreds of books. I mean, he wrote 100 books or whatever, and claims you cannot be forced to do anything through hypnosis that you won't normally do. I learned that was one of the biggest lies when I was 14 years old. I started doing hypnosis when I was 14. I met with Kreskin when I was 12, which really made me want to start doing hypnosis and get into it. I studied with an army hypnotist, and he was working in the army, proving they hypnotized people to make them do things they wanted them to do, even shooting somebody. So when the whole concept of hypnosis came out, and the person that put it together put so many lies in the program itself, it's so full of flaws. But getting back to when I was working with people that were abducted by reptilians or whatever, I'll lead them as far as they want to go, how far into every action and action that happened. But most in general, like when people say, well, they don't want to go there, they can't go there, that's all they remember. But they bring them to one place, because reptilians put a program in most people's program that it was a great experience. Anybody that you hear that said they had a great experience when they went on a reptilian ship doesn't have a clue. They have no clue what happened. They had this great program stuck in their brain, and they don't know really what happened. So we can keep it there for a little bit. I guess I just want to ask anybody real fast if they have an important question that wants to come through.
Actually, we've had one question and one phone call. I didn't get the phone call. I take it she wasn't aware that we was going to have a question and answer session. But right. I did copy a question from May Reed, and she wanted to know earlier when you were talking about the aliens and that.
Right.
So she wants to know do her prayers feed the aliens?
All right. Let me talk about that fast because it's a very important question. And I'm looking on my screen. It says prayer, dance, singing, all work with our energy. Reptilian race in general absorb energy. Prayer opens you up to that energy. If you're aware of soul, what is your prayer about? What are you praying to and why? If you're praying for all these things which allows fear and pain and suffering into it, it allows the reptilian race to suck on that energy. It opens you wide open to that. The same as like emotion. People say, well, it's hate and fear that allow reptilians to eat. I'm the only person that's going to tell you this. And whether it's going to go out, how far, it doesn't matter. Reptilians can enjoy positive energy just as well. Oh, it'll destroy them. No, it won't. Positive energy will give them just as much energy and even more. Here's a very scary, sad thing. All through history, if you read about any sacrifice, I mean, David Icke, and I just saw him too, and he talks about this greatly too, but if you listen about why sacrifices happened, why was it always called they used the word virgin? Why was it always the word child? Because here's a pure being, of pure energy, that they can take all that energy from. So when they sacrificed a child, or when they sacrificed a virgin, it was that real good pure energy that they can use 10 times more. It's like taking a big magnet versus a little magnet. I'd rather have the big magnet. So yeah, why not take something that's power charged with energy to use rather than this, well, this person's been on the street homeless and Jews and blah, blah, blah. How much energy does he have? Very little. So yes, prayer is not a good thing in general, but there is a proper way to pray. And I would just say, tuning into your connection to God. You can call it prayer, call it what you want, but you're not praying to that God to make everything beautiful out there, to change everything, just to help you be aware of who you are and live in that frame and become stronger within that itself, no matter what people say. My favorite phrase, which I used for a really long time, it's better to, I'm just sorry about that. It's being strong now and living in your own truth. It's better to die in your own belief than in somebody else's. And the movie called Highlander, the saying was, it's better to burn out than to fade away. I'd rather die in my truth, what I understand is true, than and accepting your reality and dying in that. Now, I can go through most of the races on the planet were pushed in that situation, mainly the Native American race. They were forced to be Christians if they even wanted to live. And they were forced to, the black people were forced to be with the Native people back and forth, depending on who they were killing at that time frame. But they weren't allowed to live if they weren't Christians. Children weren't even allowed to stay there with their parents up until about 45 years ago. They were taken away until they were 16, turned into drunks, and then brought back to their families. The government still, that's a whole story if you want to talk about why the government's destroying the native nation. There was 50 million people here 200 years ago, and now they're down to 750,000. If that's not sad, nothing is. And to think people in the United States don't even think about that. Think they own the land. Think they own, and I said, oh, you're spiritual? You're going to give the native people back their land? You're going to leave? You're going to go into your own place or split the land? Are you going to do anything like really responsible for what you created? And they want to say, well, we don't have karma. We didn't cause anything. We just forgive ourselves for whatever we did. Well, the native people are dying still. To this day, they're dying faster than they're growing. And the government's making sure of that. So where are we as far as spiritual? Pretty far down on the totem pole. We didn't get to the top. We're not even working at it, which is scary. Well, I hope that answered your question. Remember, whoever's listening or online right now, you could always email me anytime. I talk to anybody, no matter what they ask me or not, and I always give them a reply. I'm a realist. I live by my own truth, and I try to bring whatever I experience and what I experience as truth out to whoever wants to hear it. Just like Jesus came. He didn't come for the world. He came for the people that were ready to listen to him only. So, and I feel the same way, because there's people on this planet that do not want to know the truth. This world is not heaven. Whether you believe it is or people want to believe it is now, it is not. I use the word, 3-letter word, that people gave someplace a long time ago. It's called hell. Hell is the only place that you can experience pain and suffering. Any higher realm, you cannot. Even the astral plane, you can feel a little bit of pain, but it can't kill you. It can kill you here. This is the place where you see abuse. You see horrible things. You don't see that in the next realms, of the higher realms. Ever. It doesn't exist there. So to say that you go to hell, what could be worse than seeing your child be beat up? What could be worse than what you experience here? Nothing. The old idea of standing in the fire, we have been sitting and standing on the fire for a long time. We're learning to walk over it. That's what fire walking is about. Learning to, I can walk across fire. You live in fire. That's why you can walk across it. But people don't want to become aware of why things are happening, why they are doing what they're doing. But there's a deep-rooted thing always if you dig into it and want to search it out. These little things that men perceive, it's mind over matter. There's no such thing as mind. Spirit's the only thing that exists. Mind is the illusion that it's really doing whatever it's doing. So yeah, it gets complicated, but it doesn't really help you unless you focus on the ultimate self, and that's not ego, not understanding. The saying is, you can't help nobody else until you help yourself. If you don't understand God, how can you help anybody else do it? And if you're not doing that, what's important to help other people do? Eat? To walk across the ground and walk through the fire? Doesn't help them understand anything. Doesn't bring them any closer to anywhere else. Because they're just walking. Without a goal, there's no reason to walk. So these little things that man has twisted and corrupted just slows us down, or mankind in general, from taking that step forward. Now, getting back to the aliens. Aliens have a God. Their own God. That being, whatever you want to call it, is one that makes them feel good about what they do to us, good or bad. And it isn't the higher God. And that's the problem is most people talk about gods and God and God. It's not the highest God. Because the highest God didn't create mankind to kill each other at any level. It didn't create us to beat each other up, torture each other, or any of those words. It wasn't created for that reason. And it was the lower world, which is the passions of the mind itself, that became abusive. And well, not that it's the truest story or not, but in the Garden of Eden, when Adam ate the apple, the dragon, reptilian God, said to him, okay, you are wise just like gods. And it was always the plural, even when God spoke. He said, now you are like us. And then God says to Adam, eat of the tree of life too. You already ate of the tree of wisdom, so eat of the tree of life. So, I mean, here's really serious contradictories to what's really happening. And what man took out of that and created his own religion out of that, rather than looking at the ultimate. If you read the Bible, not that you have to believe the stories, but it's a good story. It's the best-selling story in the world. But if you read it and understand what the dragon, or the devil, the demon, whatever you want to call it, the snake, is teaching this person. But see, here's something that I only saw recently. God lies to Adam. In the very first thing one of the first sayings that it says to Adam, do you think the spiritual being has to lie to us for any reason? I think that's really a twisted, accepted faith or belief. And that God turns around and tells Adam, if you eat of that tree, you'll die. And then he eats it. Why didn't he die? Oh, well, now I'm just going to punish you for doing it. Why would God be like that? I mean, and then he puts these heavy sins on, burdens on females and males. See, people take stories and they make them sound beautiful, twist them to fit wherever they want to fit them. But follow the story through. Follow what happened, why it happened. And then, like I said, when it talks about gods or in our kind and us, and who are they talking about? If there's only one God. And there weren't. And most of those people in those time frames weren't focusing. Now, here's the biggest clincher, which I really got to put in before I stop talking. Jesus, the man, was the most spiritual person, physical being to walk this planet. I would put him above any other being, master, teacher that came to this world, even the gods that came to this world. Because the gods always have their own secret agenda that they feed people. When Jesus came and he walked on the planet, walked with people, he explained something that nobody else has ever taught to mankind. And it wasn't what Buddha taught, it wasn't what these other deities taught, and it wasn't any of that. It was a talk about death. And people say, well, oh, no, it was all about love and compassion. Jesus wasn't teaching that. If you sat with him, which I did, I was with him the whole month before he was killed, and his people that were around him couldn't understand what he was saying. I could do a whole thing on that, but I'll try to make it as short as I can. Mary Magdalene was my closest friend. It was through her that I was able to be around Jesus the whole time, because she did marry him. She did have a daughter. That whole thing is real. Whether people want to accept it or not, that's fine. But when that was happening, his own followers didn't understand what he was teaching, because when you tell somebody to understand spirit, people still don't know what that is if they didn't understand getting out of the physical body. And here's the proof in the Bible that explains it. When Jesus was teaching Peter didn't understand it. Jesus is crucified. Guess who didn't see Jesus? Peter. Why not? Because he didn't understand what Jesus was teaching him. Mary comes along and says, here, I'll teach you how to meet with Jesus. Peter says, no way, I'm not going to study from a woman. It doesn't meet Jesus. Suddenly, he goes, all right, I'm going to have to listen to you. So he listens to Mary Magdalene, and she shows him how to leave his body, and that's how he meets Jesus. All right, that's a teaching. That's the spiritual teaching that Jesus was trying to teach him in the first place. If that didn't happen, if he didn't understand it, he would never saw Jesus again. Now, Paul, in the Bible, never met with the physical Jesus. He met with him in spirit. And that's still beyond the concept of most Christian people, because, he came down. No, he left his physical body. The spirit doesn't die. And that's what Jesus was just trying to prove. Something very simple to spirit, to be aware of itself. And that became the most complicated thing. And it got twisted into stories of everything else and living here, how you should eat, how you, blah, blah. It's none of that. Because once you tune into that energy, it is a pure energy. Mankind lives in this small spectrum of a ray that comes out. Imagine a 360 circle, and you're living in like a 20, well, let's change it to about maybe a 20%, 15% part of that pie. That small part is how far you can see and experience. What about that whole rest of that pie? There's a lot more out there, and there's a lot more going on at the same time that you are totally blocked from seeing. And that's how mankind lives. Because once you step beyond that little dimension of space that you're programmed to stay in, you can see spirits, you can see energy, you can see all those things that are out there, which helps make living so different. You become more unattached. I mean, I can quote a lot of things Jesus said, but that's just one person. Now, if you just say it for yourself, what can I experience if I understand being outside of my body? Everything and anything. You can go beyond the depths of any realm, any world, any person, any alien, and you can experience so much. But if you believe that little alien that's outside the solar system is your God, how much further can you go? I mean, any teacher, the best that they can do is to teach a student more than they know, or to help them get to a place where they can understand more than they know. That's a good teacher. A teacher that keeps you programmed and locked into what I know, and this is what you have to know, is not a teacher. They're a controlling person. I think there's a word for it, master controller, master something, but it's a person that locks you into this, and this is all that there is. And there's nobody on this realm, no alien that knows half of what's going on in the ultimate realities. To say that there's dimensions and all these things we can go into, we can get into the next dimension, which they're doing with the collider, and how they're trying to go through the dimensions and stuff like that. They're trying to make suits to go through the dimensions, to go through the black hole, crash a black hole, all these things. It's all a physical realm. Imagine all this stuff we're talking about, every single thing that we've been talking about is only one grain of sand. The planet Earth, the moon, the sun, the solar system, all the aliens, all their ships and planets is just one cell inside the finger. Then imagine that finger's only inside another small cell of a bigger cell. And that's what you have to focus on if you want to truly understand what God is. If you want to focus on a little bit of grain of sand on the beach, pick one grain of sand up and contemplate on that forever. If that's what you want to do. And as long as you stay inside the box, which means not being able to leave the physical body, you can't experience that. If you're not aware of lifetimes, all that knowledge and all the experiences you went through was in vain. You could have taken all that and used it. And it could have brought you to a much higher level spiritually, for the word, because you'll understand about that. So what I'm saying is, getting back to teaching about death versus life, and the way Jesus worded it, he who holds on to life will lose it. He who gives it up will have eternal life. Because you're going to keep dying if you hold on to the physical body and the physical reality. You're going to keep coming back, it's going to keep dying, it's going to keep coming back, and it's going to keep dying. You're not going to take that step further to let go of that. And then the mind keeps getting programmed the second you walk back into it, and then you put all the people that you know and want to help and work with, and it's just a lock into the astral plane and the physical realm. Most people in the astral plane come back to the physical realm. There is a place there you can go and stay there if you want, but even that has to be worked for, and you have to attain a certain level of like working off of most of your karma that's here. But those things, it's hard to go through in detail what they are until you can understand what it really means to work out karma. You kill somebody, you don't just give money to the father and mother or whatever and say, okay, I paid the karma off. It's not that easy. Crossing a person across the street, oh, that's good, or doing this. That's not very much karma to pay off. Now, if you live a life that's pure, you don't create much karma. That means you don't have to work on paying that off or working with dealing with it. So you can work with all the karma that you brought into this realm with. Oh, I can just do a rebirthing ceremony, I can do this and get rid of all my karma. No, you can't. I mean, there's wishful thinking. And most people in the New Age world just want to say, oh, everything's going to be beautiful. They're going to be super spiritual in a year. I'm waiting. I mean, I'm kind of finishing my time frame up on the lower world, the physical plane. And I want to give the best that I can to bring my truth out to people that are ready to listen. I mean, the next world, the worlds after, the multiple higher realms are incredible. If you go there, you don't want to come back here. There's no reason to come back here. Oh, to save everybody. No, you can't save it. That's why it's here. It's to learn that it's a soul, that it's self, and it has to become aware of itself. That's all. And then when it does that, it's up to that soul. Nobody has the right to change that for somebody else, which is the biggest law, and I call it the law of non-interference. And 99% of the people on this planet love to interfere with that rule and change it and play and be a part of it. When we come into this world as soul gave its karma. Very few souls are forced into certain things that they're not supposed to be in, which I was one of them. I won't even get into that. But when knowing your karma, when you come into this world, how much you have to do and what you have to do to pay it off, it's not like doing 10 jobs a day or buying 10 houses or any of that kind of stuff, because that's not where it's at. It's a matter of digging deeper into your soul and being aware of it. Because at that moment, when you're in the inner worlds, time doesn't exist. And you could do billions of things in the time it would take lifetimes here to do. So, I said this since the beginning, and I'll say it every chance I can, learning how to escape the physical body and the physical reality is the most important thing any soul can learn in this world. Not about how many children you can have, how many wives you can have, any of that. That's all the opposite. It all takes us away from experience the true God. If you want to experience the true God, you got to realize that you're deserving of it, and you have to make yourself at that place to be deserving of it, because God, and I'll say this to everybody listening, whoever hears this message, God doesn't listen to everybody. It doesn't need to, and it doesn't have to, and it doesn't. Because if somebody's sitting here saying, I want to kill somebody, you think God has to listen to that? And why would it want to? He says, you're in hell, you're going to play there until you learn that you are ready to let go of it. And as long as man keeps the delusion that he's going to go to hell if he's bad and he's not in it, he'll keep doing the illusions, because now that's what free will is all about. Creating more karma for yourself and not being responsible for it. And when I say when you become aware of God, you become aware of responsibility as soul, not a physical body. Because we're in a world controlled by corrupt, evil beings. And to live free, we cannot. To ever think you can is an illusion. Now, how much time do we have, roughly? I guess you walked away, but sorry about that. So, the illusion of how much we can actually do in a lifetime and how many people we can help is our game that we play. But as long as we're in this reality, we have to be responsible to ourselves as soul. And that's where each one of us has to really wake up and not say, magic dust is going to be poured over the planet by the end of this year. So each experience that we have, that we claim as an experience, is usually an experience to help keep us tied to this realm. More attached to something, more attached to the things around us, more attached to what's going on here.
Keep it in the physical rather than the spiritual.
Right. What I wanted to ask you, how much time do we have?
Well, okay, I'm showing we got about 30 more minutes if we're going to have a 2-hour show, which I would personally probably recommend not going over 2 hours without telling people in advance, because most people may not.
I'm sure.
Set 3 hours aside or more.
Right, no, I understand that. Now I just want to keep track, because I just want to get at least to a few major points before it ends.
Sure.
Because I know there's always questions, but if you rather just...
You're always welcome to come back, too.
Right, but the people that are listening right now, please, send your questions directly to me. I'll write a page, I'll write whatever I have to answer your question. I feel that it's my only gift that I have to give back to people, is what I experienced. And if it helps them just just a teeny little bit understand where they are and what they need to do in this lifetime, or what they're really working for. But I mean, you don't have to use the word God if you don't believe in a God. Use source if you like the word source as the ultimate source, or spirit. I mean, those words, I mean, when you don't understand what it is, it's hard to talk about it. So when people say, oh, Father, Son, the Holy Ghost, or Spirit, the Holy Spirit, or the Great Spirit, whatever words they give it, it's a limited viewpoint. The native people say the Great Spirit, and most native people were afraid of spirit, in a lot of different ways. They felt that people could steal their spirit. They felt that, these evil spirits, and they dealt with it in so many different ways, but they believed a lot of it. Not offense to any religion or any path. Most visions given to people keep people in the calmer world that they live in. I don't know too many people that had this great vision that saved mankind, or that saved the world, or took people out of the place where they're in right now. Because when they talk about the native visions brought them to death. Most of the fights and everything, when they thought they were bulletproof and all this. One second, what? Oh, we have a great Tesla coming in for all the things that we have right now. And he even admitted in his book that he worked with an alien. Alright? And people don't want to hear that either. But here's a person that came out with 196 inventions. About 10-15% of them our government took and locked up in their safe, and started working with a few, gave the rest back to his country, but they're all techniques and ways to get out of the world that we're actually living in. But he did create some things that were scary, like an earthquake machine, the doomsday gun. But he also created free energy, the first radio, and the ability to create all frequency that we use on everything we use today. So half of his stuff was good. Most of his stuff wasn't used, and the stuff that is the bad things that he created. And that's called HAARP, HARP. So, and then that created the Philadelphia experiment. Check those things out. A friend of mine just released a book which really gets into it. Strange Universe. Tune into that show, you'll hear about it. It's interesting what's going on there, but that's a whole different thing. I mean, I know a lot about it. I was involved with part of it, but that's so off mainstream of what we're talking about, because that's the few that really understand any of that. But I'm talking about the things that affect each and every one of us right now, every moment of our life, whatever we do, wherever we go, and how we're going to work with that to be the best we can spiritually. And the word spiritually means connected to spirit, not just saying a word, because that doesn't mean anything if it's not true to what it truly means. So the idea that over the next couple of years, this world's spiritual. I'm waiting for the end of the year. All the prophecies and all the dates will end the end of this year. Sure, there's a couple of people coming up for 3 months from the beginning of next year when a disaster happens and blah, blah, blah. It's going to crash because the idea that the Galactic Confederation, Ashtar Command, all these ships are going to come down and save mankind. People need to wake up to what their true God is and who their true teacher is. If you give it over to anything, including an alien race, what are you giving over? You're giving up your own true self, and that means you're allowing them to use your energy. And that's why we're here in the first place, and we give into that. Now, religions, I wanted to say that, are going to crash if just one alien ship lands on the planet, which will happen soon. I've been saying it for a long time, but now that they're being seen everywhere on the planet right now, and the government's crashing, and the controls being shifted, that's a whole, I mean, all these things fit together. If you're on top of everything, you have to piece it together. I mean, I spent my whole life piece by piece and putting them together, and realized they all fit. It's not like the New World Order is not real, the secret government's not real, the demons aren't real, all these things, they all exist in this physical realm. And that's why I do call it hell. Because once you get past the astral plane, and you start going into the higher realms, there is no darkness, no demons, none of that stuff exists. So when light comes down into this world, it gets perverted. So that's why I'm saying God isn't that, but it allows it to exist. Because if God wanted this whole world to be purified, it would be. But it wouldn't help those souls take that step. And each soul has to take that step by its own self-awareness and truth, which is not happening greatly because we keep producing more people that are moving further and further away from that spark. And here's something that it's true for me, not meant to be true for nobody else, but no fear of God means no fear of life. No fear of life means you can do whatever you want. That being so, there is no good and bad. That being so, there is nothing right or wrong. That being so, you're very evil. In reality, you can say, oh no, there's no right or wrong, I can do whatever I want. Yes, in hell you can. But you'll never experience the God realms because of that. You can call me any name you want, but that is the ultimate truth. I don't care who's out there, whether it's the Pope, Dalai Lama, the President, you name it. That's the truth. And you can experience that if you really want to. And like I said, anybody emails me, I'll give them my first book, that'll help them understand the different realms and stuff and what gods are there and things like that. But you have to make that commitment. And over the past 10 years, I meet very few people that are willing to do a simple technique for 30 days. Why is that? Because it's easier to reincarnate 20 times than work 30 days to do something. Not to me, but most people, that's how they live their life. That's the way they're programmed. What you don't do today, what you can do tomorrow. I mean, is that the solution? And I guess that's the sad part of the solution. We don't change it now, it will never change. If Obama gets in, the world will not change. I mean, I'm not very political, but I do know that if we have the same people that are running get in, we don't change much at all. Now, somebody like Ron Paul, who's a rebel, he can change it. He's not going to change everything, but he's going to try. And without trying, it's a totally useless game. Living life, if you're not going to try to get better, then why even try at all? To me, I realize if God didn't exist, there would be no reason for life. And why go pretend that life's good if I'm not going to go nowhere when I die? The fear of death deeply is rooted in most people because they don't know what's going to happen when they die. And that's why I say, until you can experience that, the fear of dying is always there. But then to me, it's the opposite. It's the fear of living forever would be the most scariest thing. Because living in hell forever is scary. I mean, we're going to turn into the bliss. Here's the next thing I'll talk about for a little bit. The bliss world. The bliss state. Living in bliss in the physical realm. I don't know what people think bliss is or how it could be so incredible. But think about it. What in your realm or reality or mind is bliss? Feeling good? Seeing everybody happy? Okay, what else? Everybody's in love? Everybody's married? Everybody has children? How many times sex do you have a day? I mean, what is the ultimate bliss state for most people? Don't ask men and women will definitely have different answers. But if you tell them to be real about it, if you had them on a lie detecting machine, you're going to see most men, it'll have something sexual coming out of it no matter how you look at it. Women will say a relationship. So there is a big difference. There's the book Men Are from Mars and Women Are from Venus. I mean, it is a definite split. I mean, if you go in the Bible, how Adam was ripped open and the bone was pulled out of his chest and created a woman and all that stuff, I mean, it sounds like an alien operation to me, which it probably was. But getting back to the point, men and women are different. And we're living in a reality where women are still being the sex object for everything to this day in the greatest it has ever been. Every movie, every show, every commercial. You see a normal dressed person on TV? Do you see normal people? I mean, come on, what is the story about? Are they talking about sex always? We have corrupted our morals to the point there are none. Most people don't realize what morals mean. If you ask 10 people what morals mean, I bet the only definitions you'll probably get is, well, I don't steal. and I don't hit my mother, I mean, how far do their morals go? I mean, going beyond morals is, we have passed the limit. We accept anything for anything. And the more you accept, the more you have to accept. The old saying now, if one person believes something, they have to allow that to happen. I mean, the idea of having a prayer in schools and stuff and then taking it out, now they're going to try to put it back in some place. It's a game they play, controlling us, controlling people's thoughts, the way they live and the way they act. Getting back to this utopia, or this bliss state of living in a physical reality. To me, the human body is the most disgusting thing on the planet. A tree grows. A plant grows. Human body eats, goes to the bathroom, gets dirty, has to take a shower. I mean, infections get through it, and all these, and we're very sickly. The body itself is not a pure being or a vessel. So why would people want to live in this a little longer? Make it a little healthier to live in it a little longer. It's still going to deteriorate, and it's still going to break down and die. So the idea of this bliss state, okay, come on, what is your idea of bliss? Well, dig it out. There is no ultimate bliss because 10 people can't agree on one thing. Imagine forcing 7 billion people to agree on one thing, no matter what it was. That everybody has to get married, that everybody has to have sex once a day, everybody has to, anything. Could you agree on anything that everybody has to agree on? It's an impossibility. So the idea of that, it'll exist among groups of people, and that's what religion is. People that accept a certain principle, certain ideas, and work together in that. Like a kibbutz, and in the old days, like when Easy Rider came out, and they formed like this little group of people. You learn to respect each other and live in that. And that's what it is. Call it bliss, call it what you want. But there's a reality outside of that that's still affecting you. The government polluting the planet, spraying the sky with chemtrails every day, the HAARP system bouncing beams around the planet. These things exist. And here's the other thing. You pray and all you want doesn't stop that, because it has escalated over the past 25 years to an incredible, horrible degree right now. So the idea, oh, we pray, it changes things. It prays when you get a little more in touch with yourself. That's what changes you. But to change the world, it's changing by itself. The earth doesn't need people on it to purify it or change it. Man has the only thing that it could do for the earth is actually blow it up. And it's doing pretty good at that. I mean, if it wasn't for certain races that are trying to stop us from blowing up the planet, which they do, it would be serious for the planet right now. But they can't stop us completely. Because Japan happened, the planet's in very serious problems right now. Oh, pray for it to heal. We've been praying that things like that didn't happen. Problem is, the karma that man creates keeps creating more karma. And the more karma you create, creates more things to happen. And as long as we allow that, even child abuse, children starving, two things that should not exist in a real compassionate world. So we're not compassionate. So how can we say we're spiritual? I mean, there could be homeless people how far from your house? Do you care? So when these people say they're spiritual, is the most ridiculous thing. Now I'll quote something else Jesus said. And remember, I'm saying things that I know Jesus said directly. I was with him. He did say, the wording was a little bit different, but basically it means it's easier for a camel to go through an eye of a needle than a rich person to go into heaven. Meaning, if you have all this money and all this wealth and you know there's a person down the block starving, how can you say you're spiritual? And how do you expect to go into heaven? By giving them some of that money? I mean, this story is like Cain and Abel. All the stories, some of the stories have meaning with it, who wrote them and how they got there, but it was people reflecting on ideas. And the ideas of what's stopping me from becoming spiritual, what's going to help me become more spiritual. Problem is, most people didn't know how to become more spiritual. That's why I go on about spirit, about leaving the body. And get in touch with me, I'll tell you ways, and there's a few paths out there that teach getting out of the body. And here's something, and I'll tell you one of the simplest way, the whirling dervishes spin, and they spin for hours and they leave their bodies. But realize, I don't know if you can remember being a child, some people can't, some people are younger. when you're little and you start spinning around and you do it because it feels so good? Do you know when the body starts spinning, within a short period of time, soul rises outside of the top of the brain and stays right above the body? And that's just your bliss at that moment, and that's why children love doing it. Even though the brain's spinning and it's losing control over spirit, and that's why you get sick and nauseous. But when you pop back into the body, you fall down, whatever. But that point is a way children can do it naturally. And there's a religion which is ancient that have been doing it and they still do it now. They put these white dresses with these white caps and they spin in circles. But they leave their bodies. And it's just one technique. And I'm not saying if you resort to that or have to, it's still one way that helps. Just to get in touch with that experience, even if it's for 1 second, to understand that it's there. Because again, if you don't touch that aspect of that, you'll never understand that it's really there.
Right.
Because people go on and on about healing and this and purification and bliss. What is bliss? What is this world reality of 6? I'm telling you, we're really at 12 dimensions if you want to be. But at 5th level or 6th dimension, beings are still no more spiritually aware because they're only dealing with the astral plane. And there, like I said, there's where you can see the creatures fighting, and you can see all those other things that you don't see here. But this world reflects what's happening there just as much. And when you step there, you'll learn about guides, protectors, and all that, which is a beneficial thing, because if you learn how to meet your spiritual guides, people say, well, they're not real. I said, they are real. After 4 deaths, I can say definitely they are. And everybody, for some reason, has spirit protectors that will work with them when they're ready or if they listen. So it's great to become aware of that even. But as far as God, very few people want to go deep into what God really is. Because if it's not a man that loves them, it's useless in the physical realm. Because love, the aspect of love, everybody on this planet wants love. So they're going to create this idea that it's there. Many people go through a whole lifetime without experiencing true love, which is sad, very sad. They don't know what it is because they didn't experience it, and then it's that much harder for them to understand God. The way we perceive love in a relationship is only 1/10% of what 100% of love God could even be. And until you can learn to experience that, you're losing all that. And what do you get in reply, or in turn in this physical world? Food and sex and whatever that tries to fulfill that. It's impossible. So in a relationship, if people don't even understand that, they're looking for this ultimate reality to come from something that's so far from it. And that's why relationships are crashing. We're trying to become more spiritual, trying to become more aware, and we're limiting ourselves to the physical realm and the physical realities that the physical body's emotions and feelings are dwelled and attached to. It's an impossibility. And then we have science throwing in all these stupid things. Do you think science told us anything about God ever yet that's important for mankind? Other than that there is probably no God and that we're all just created from a spark that just jumped through the universe. I mean, if you want to believe that, you'll still live in the physical box that's the lower realm, which is the earth, the physical realm, and the astral plane. And even when they crack the black hole and everything, they're only going to get to the astral plane. Those dimensions and those beings that live there are coming through. I can go into that because I spent years doing UFO work and research with that. It's split open. That's why more people can see spirits and things and all these other things that are coming into the realm right now. And that's why more souls are being born with these things coming into it. But it all doesn't matter until you realize that there's only one really important thing that's working, that you need in this lifetime to work for. And that's to take that step and find out what you are as spirit and soul and understand that. Because if you get hung up in science or history, they're all lies. They're only small parts of truth. And if you can live with that, which most people like to, oh, I got this, I know this. But they don't know why. Everybody that I work with that's abducted have no clue, understand it. I mean, even the ones that thought they had a great experience until they break beyond the bubble of what they were programmed to believe. Now you got the government throwing the same programs on people. because it's only going to twist and keep you further from realizing the truth. And I like I said, I don't plan on staying here for a long time. It's hard to talk to a wall. It's very hard. I mean, it's okay for a while.
I'm a father of 3, I know.
It's the same thing. When you give them the teachings, you tell them it's wrong or tell them it's right, and they still do the same thing. It's sad, because the problem is right now, who's going to suffer? The children. All the children that are going to be born in the next 3 to 4 years are going to be very sickly. All of them. Even the radiation that's coming from the sun right now that's going to be hitting the planet within a year. People don't realize that radiation doesn't disappear. It's not like a magic wand. You can wave it and it's gone. Not like Japan's problem is stopping, because it has not, and it's been escalating. So we hide from the truth and just still put this thing, oh, everything's beautiful. If we pray, everything's going to be all right. Well, people prayed thousands of years ago, and look where we are right now. Look at what's happened to the people that have been praying for the whole time. It's sad. But the problem is, when you think the world is so important, and life in this world is so important, you lose reality, what soul is.
Right. Now, Tommy, I was going to also let you know that Open Mind was wanting to know, if God's Spirit runs through everything, could it be that everything that exists makes up the body of God?
I will say it this way. It's only one cell inside God. Imagine, okay, in your body you have the red blood cells and the white blood cells. And then you have the lymphocytes. I don't know if I'm saying that right. But they are responsible for removing all the dead cells out of the body. The red carries them away, the white one, and then the lymphocytes come in and they take them, they eat them up, and then they bring them out. The lymphocytes can destroy everything that comes in the body, if the body's working right. When the body takes in, there's 1 million inside the body. So if the body brings in 2 million enemies, the armies gets defeated, and that's how you get sick. And the government knows that too, so they create more bacteria and bring more stuff into the body. But what I'm trying to say is, that whole thing that you're trying to talk about, the earth, the heaven, the planet, the people, is just one cell, like the one drop of blood flowing through your body. It's a part of it. But it's not the part that thinks, it's not the part that's aware, it's not the part that can change every other part of itself. Alright, God in itself could make all universes, all realms disappear within a split second if it wanted to. The same as it created them. It didn't create it all in one day. It didn't create all the different races. It didn't create, it grows like we are supposed to. By every billion of people that take a step forward in understanding, it goes back into the source of itself, and it becomes more aware. Like if you created a dinosaur and said, well, that's not doing much. I'm going to create something a little more better, or a little more positive. Or I'm going to create this. It keeps allowing God itself to create more. But, in general, this is the place where it has to learn how to work with that. Because here's what I'll explain, which I have been given the gift. Once you go past the 5th realm, not the 5th dimension, the 5th realm, which there's 5 gods you have to go past to get to that realm. When you go into that realm, God allows a being soul, which actually separates from soul, but I'll use that word for now, is allowed to create its own universe. And your universe could be 10 times bigger than this whole universe. And that's up to you. But what I'm saying is, to say that, like, okay, we're all part of God, yeah, but you're not part of God until you become totally aware of it and what you can do. If you're not aware you can raise a mountain, you're not going to raise a grain of sand. And if you can't do that, you can't say you're a God, because God could raise universes. So, yeah, there's a fine line of connection, but in reality, if that soul's not aware, definitely not. The same as, here's something I'll say, you'll never hear another person say this either, probably not anyway. God can create or uncreate the soul. The same as your body, if it has a defective cell in it, it rejects it and pushes it out. So in that realm, if God has a mass murder, it puts it in hell. Why are they here? People don't look at it that way. Or they'll go to hell. Why are they here? Why are they still coming here? Because this is where they go. This is the bottom seed cell that needs to be purified or just removed. And that's why every time in history, when it gets so out of hand, it's destroyed. Multiple races for thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years have just disappeared because they're playing with these lower gods. These gods convince them that everything's perfect, being their food or power, and then they realize that they're destroying the planet. I hope that answered the question a little. I can get into that more if you want. Please email me again.
Did you give me your email address?
Oh, I don't know if I gave it to you. It's real simple. Hawksblood1, AOL.com, or howtoseegod, AOL.com. Either one.
Don't forget his website. Is www.howtoseegod.org. I had to scroll back down to it. I had the chat room up.
Oh, well, it's like, I hope I can come back soon, and we'll get into some of the details of each one of the topics. Like I said, I wanted to put some of it out there, and then you can get some ideas of questions and things that you'd really like to ask or talk about, because right now mankind has been so programmed, everything's so perfect, everything's going to be perfect, and we got to go through a little bit of bumps here and there. If one child dies, that shouldn't be. Something's wrong. The system's not working when that happens. When millions of children are starving and dying, the system is corrupt. So to say bliss and purification and everything's great, look around the world. Just because in your neighborhood you got a house and a car doesn't mean everybody else on the planet has their next meal coming to them, because they don't. 90% of the people on this planet do not know when their next meal is going to come in a day. And if you don't think that's not a scary situation to be in, wait till you're in it. So, please email me, hawksblood1@AOL.com, anytime. I reply to every email I get. So, good or bad, whatever you want to write, fine. Definitely open to replying to what people write to me. I mean, I write to everybody that lectures on the main scene, and I usually get replies. Sometimes I don't. I'll send 10 more if I don't. But I'm pretty persistent, honest, and I can only tell you what I truly experienced myself. I'm not telling you what everybody else experienced, because I have no clue. Even if they had a near-death experience, most of them have a simple near-death experience, meaning by that they go through the light, and they see the light, and they're sent back. They don't go beyond that. Go beyond that. Go beyond the next realm. Go into the weird God, and it's only a doorway, and you're peeking through it. So the techniques, please, if you want techniques or places to find out how to get out of the body, there's many ways. Native people do it different. Tribal people do it different. Most white people do it totally different. I mean, it's different ways to get to the same place or to get to the same experience, which everyone needs to experience. But very few people do experience that. Even dancing's a good way to get to it.
Okay. Well, Tommy, I was going to mention to you that right now I'm booked up into July, but I can send you a date for another Saturday in July. As soon as I get off the air here, or probably I'd say sometime tomorrow would be the best time. And we can go into this a little bit further. Sorry it's so far off, but, well, I get a lot of people booked.
Right. No, I understand that. Well, that would be great. Definitely. And for anybody listening, please, I'll give anybody that emails me right now, if they want my first book, I'll send it to them.
Okay. And also, folks, if y'all want to send in questions for Tommy or even other guests, you can email me at redneckradioman@comcast.net. Just put in the subject line, questions for and whoever the guest is. You can also put in the subject line, guest recommendation and the guest that you want me to do, their name, and tell me a little something about them in the body. Tommy, I'm going to go ahead and cut you loose for now. Let everybody get back to whatever they were doing. Some people were probably preparing for Easter. Others were probably just getting ready to go to the mall or make supper or something. And I'm going to probably stay on the air for just a couple of more minutes to, mention who my next show is and to remind them of your URL and that sort of thing. And I'll have you back in July, and I'll be in touch with you hopefully by tomorrow with that date. It'll probably be the second Saturday in July, though.
Well, do what you want to do, because it's like July's a little bit far away, so it's not like I need to know tomorrow.
Okay.
Well, it's definitely been a pleasure, and it was glad to talk again.
Oh, I'm always happy to have you on my show. You're a great guest, and I want to thank you for coming.
Well, thank you. Take it easy. Goodbye to everybody out there. It was a pleasure.
You have a good
day. Yes.
Oh, and happy Easter.
Yes, happy Easter.
Bye-bye. Okay, everybody, real quick, I wanted to remind y'all his website, and let me make sure that I didn't disconnect myself from the air and I'm not talking to the air. Oh, I can see I'm still registering. But anyway, his website is www.howtoseegod.org. For people not here at my site, it's www.paranormalpalace.com. Once you're registered and a member, it's free. You can go into your profile and request a newsletter, and you can be kept up to date on upcoming shows. I also like to remind everybody to come back this Tuesday evening, and my guest is going to be Alexandra Parnes. She has a book out titled Activate Joy, and we're going to talk to her about that Tuesday night. I also want to remind everybody to click on the Friends link on the left in the menu there, and stop by there and maybe pay a visit to my friends over at Alien and UFO Community, or at the Supernatural UFO Forum, or at the United Paranormal International. Also, I've made friends with some new people over at a place called World UFO Day, and they every July 2nd celebrate UFO Day as a day that kind of like a yearly birthday for the UFO phenomena, and they're encouraging everybody to do the same. There's a link to them up in the upper right corner, little blue icon that you just click that icon and it'll take you right to their page if you want to know more about them. And don't forget, I got some radio stations here that I personally recommend. I know the hosts of them, and I think the great places is KPN Radio, JimHarold.com, Gradian Report, and Ohio Exopolitics. You can click on the radio favorites on the left-hand side, and that'll take you right there. In the meantime, I want to remind everybody to have a great Easter weekend and to pass my link around, invite people to the shows. Hopefully we can grow and, everybody can just have a good time and learn. I'm going to call it quits right there, and I'm going to go get started on my dinner. Everybody have a good night. Bye-bye.